Marhaba, ahlan wa sahlan. In this video, we are going to be talking about the oral exam because we're now at the end of the semester and we are getting prepared and ready for this exam. This exam is going to be a reading exam. You are going to be reading a paragraph out loud. And in that exam, you will have a paragraph that will be all in Arabic. It will be majority your vocab words, consisting of your vocab words that we have done up until now. Anything from units 1 through 10 is fair game on the oral exam. Now, this is the rubric. This is what I'm looking at. The first thing that we're looking at here is letter pronunciation. Can you pronounce the letters correctly? It's as easy as that, okay? The second thing is pronunciation of sun and moon letters and connecting words. This is the lesson that we did on huruf al-shamsiyya wal-qamariyya, and we talked about how words get connected. So on the one hand, it's making sure that you can pronounce words properly, right? So if you have a word like this, we look at the noon here, we have alif lam, and then we look at the letter noon. The letter noon, na, you use the tip of your tongue to say this letter. Therefore, it is considered shamsi. So we said that letters that are min huruf shamsiyya, the sun letters, we pronounce them with a shadda. So we skip over this lam, and instead of saying al, we say an. So this would be pronounced an-nur. Okay. Now, when I talk about connecting words, so this is 3 points, right? Half of that is, can you pronounce the words properly? So if the word has alif lam, can you pronounce it properly? Can you recognize when you have to pronounce the lam and when you don't pronounce the lam? And that requires you to remember which letters are sun letters, which letters are moon letters. Now, in terms of connecting the words, that has to do, I'll give you an example here. If you had two words like this, sabah, and then the word an-nur. Anytime you see a sentence and there's a word that has alif lam and there's a word before it, you need to make sure that you're connecting those words, okay? So instead of saying sabah an-nur, we're going to connect that ha to the noon, sabah an-nur. Okay, so if it had a fatha on it, we would say sabah an-nur. You're connecting the fatha and the ha, and you're connecting it here to the shadda on the noon. So remember, that happens when you have alif lam and it's followed by a letter that's a sun letter. Okay. Now, of course, if it is followed by a letter, let me erase this. Let's do the same exact example, and we'll do a different word here. So if you had this example, right, then you have alif lam and it's followed by the letter kha. Kha does not use your tongue to be pronounced. Therefore, it's considered a moon letter. So moon letters, we pronounce the al as we normally would, al-khair. So if you have a word that has alif lam and it's a moon letter, so you say al, we take the letter before and we connect it here to that sukoon on the lam. Sabah al-khair. Sabah al-khair. So the ha gets connected to the lam. So that's what I mean by connecting words. And there's a couple of videos that I did from Unit 9 and one from Unit 10, which go over plenty of practice sentences that have specifically this rule right here. Okay. Then I'm going to be looking at the harakat and tanween. So can you pronounce your harakat properly? Can you pronounce the a, u, e sound if you see a fatha, dhamma, kasra? Can you pronounce n if you see fathatain? And un if you see a dhammatain? And in if you see kasratain? Okay. Your fluency and your pace. So all of the words are coming from your vocab. So that means you should be pretty comfortable with your vocab words. When you see a word, you should be able to recognize it. If you're still struggling with that, that means you really need to study the vocab, okay? So I don't want you to be reading the oral exam paragraph and take an entire minute to read one word. So if you see something like this, you know this word is morning. So it shouldn't take you so long to read it. Now, if you're reading the paragraph slowly, that's fine, but it shouldn't be extremely slow where it looks like you can't recognize the letters or you're not recognizing the word after looking at it for a little bit. So there's the fluency and the pace is also what I'm looking at. And then timeliness, just making sure that it is on time, that it is submitted on time. Okay, and for those who are in a face-to-face class, that you show up at your scheduled allotted time on time. But for those of you on the purely online class, to make sure that it's submitted on time. Okay, so let's look at a couple of paragraphs. I gave you guys a handout that has 3 paragraphs in that handout, and these are the type of paragraphs that you will see. So the rule of thumb, when you see the paragraph, the first thing that you want to do is skim through it. So at this point, pause the video and look at that handout and sort of just skim through it. See if you can have a general understanding of what the paragraph is about and what the words are. Okay, and then what you want to do is, as you're skimming it, if there are words that you don't recognize, okay, you're going to circle those words. So any word that you don't recognize, you go ahead and you circle it. And then the second thing that you want to do after you skimmed it and you circle some of the words that you don't know, go back, obviously, look at your vocab and make sure that you figured out what those words are so you know what they are. In this oral exam, I'm not grading you on comprehension. So if you don't understand the paragraph or there are words that you don't know, it doesn't really matter for this exam. It's really about your ability to read it. Okay, what we're looking at is, can you read it? Can you recognize the words? Can you pronounce them properly? And so on. Okay, so what you want to do then is go through and draw any arrows on words that have alif lam that need to be connected to the word before. So that goes back to this right here, the sun and moon letters. Okay, here we go. So there were some formatting issues, some letters weren't connected, so I went back and did that. So let's go again where we were talking about. We said that you're going to underline any example where you have alif lam, and there's a word before it. Okay, so if it's the first word in the sentence, you don't have to worry about it. But if it is, if there's a word before it, then underline it so that you know that you have to connect it. So in this case, we have al-maghrib. You have the letter mim, and mim is harf qamari. It's a moon letter because you don't use your tongue. Therefore, you pronounce the al sound. So when there's a word before it, you take that last vowel, which is the fatha, and you connect it to that lam. So instead of saying min al-maghrib, we're going to say min al-maghrib. The na is going to connect to this lam right here, min al-maghrib. So you want to do that. The other thing that you want to do is go through, and if there are any examples of tanween, circle those. So we're going to go through here, and we're going to look at examples of tanween. Here you have an example. That's the symbol for dhammatain. Because look, this is a regular dhamma. This, when it has that tail right here, that means it's 2 of them. We have one right here, dhammatain. And we have fathatain right there. And that's all of them. So now let's go through and let's practice reading. Ana ismi Layla. Remember, when you have this letter right here, this is alif maqsura. It's an alif that looks like a ya, and we covered this in unit 10. So we pronounce it like a regular alif. It just looks like a ya, it doesn't have dots. Ana ismi Layla. So my name is Layla. Wa ana askun fi. So this wa just means and. Wa ana askun fi madinati Dearborn. If we were to spell this out, Dearborn. Dearborn. Okay. أنا اسمي ليلى وأنا أسكن في مدينة Dearborn. So if you were to try to figure out what this word meant, because you may have circled this in the beginning, saying you weren't sure what this means. Well, now you can try to figure it out through context. My name is Layla, and I blank fi Madinati Dearborn, in the city of Dearborn. So what do you do in the city of Dearborn? Live. And notice here's your clue. It starts with the alif hamza, which is the prefix in a present tense verb for I. So I live in the city of Dearborn. Okay. Abi ismuhu Muhammad. Abi ismuhu Muhammad. Remember, when we take here ismi, this was my name. If we say ismuhu, we put this hu at the end, it's his name. So my dad, his name is Muhammad. Wa huwa, and he, remember wa always means and, وهو, here's your connection that you have to do. من المغرب. So if you were to read that together, we would say أبي اسمه محمد وهو من المغرب. He's from المغرب, Morocco. أمي, so this is the word which means mother, and the ya here means mine. So my mom, so first we were talking about my dad, now we're talking about my mom. أمي اسمها هانا. Now notice here we have a ha, which is her. So in this one we said his name, and this one we're saying her name. اسمها هانا. وهي, and she is من أمريكا. وهي من أمريكا. She's from America. Notice here there's no alif lam, so there's nothing that you have to connect there. It's just من أمريكا. Whereas here we had the alif lam, so we had to say من المغرب. We had to connect the two. عندنا قطة. So عندنا, this na is we. So we have, remember we did the preposition عند. When you add a noon alif at the end, it means ours or that we have. So عندنا, we have قطة. So remember here, when you have a word that has a ta marbuta and then there's tanween on it, you're going to pronounce the T sound with the un. قطة. Okay? If it didn't have anything on it, we would just say قطة. Right? But we want to pronounce the ta with the un sound. قطة. عندنا قطة, we have a cat. So if it doesn't have alif lam, it has the meaning of a. Okay? عندنا قطة جميلة. نفس الشيء, the same thing here. We have ta مربوطة, we're going to pronounce the T sound with the un. عندنا قطة جميلة جدا. جدا was one of those words that we saw last chapter. It means very. So here you have fathatain. Remember, when you have fathatain, you're going to pronounce it with the n sound. And this fathatain is on the dal. So remember, anytime you have a word that doesn't end in a ta marbuta, doesn't end in a hamza, it has to be written with an alif. That's why that's there. But the n sound that you're pronouncing is on the letter before it, which is the letter dal. So we stop on the dal because it has a shadda, jid. And the second time we pronounce it, done. Okay? جدا. عندنا قطة جميلة جدا. We have a very beautiful cat. So very goes at the end of the adjective. Notice here the noun comes first, and then the adjective, and then very. أنا أحب قطتي. أنا أحب قطتي. I love قطتي, my cat. اسمها, her name is فيفي. اسمها فيفي. هي تحب دجاج وخبز. Okay. Now if this here had an alif lam, we would have pronounced it with the shadda on the dal because dal is a sun letter. So we would have said هي تحب الدجاج. And if there was an alif lam here, we would say والخبز because the kha is a moon letter. So we pronounce the lam. هي تحب الدجاج والخبز. Okay. Let's look at the next one. So you're going to pause it, skim through it, see if there's anything that any words that you don't know and circle them, and then go through and you're going to draw the lines. So here we have an example, and here we have an example, and here we have an example. We've got tons of examples of alif lam in this one, and this was so that you have good practice. Okay, so those are the examples of connecting. Then we're going to go through and look at examples of tanween. Okay, and that's the only one. So now let's go through and read them. أذهب إلى الجامعة. So أذهب, I go, or I'm going, Ila means to, and now we have the a sound from ila, and we have to connect it here. So the letter Jim is a moon letter, so we're going to connect it to the lam because the lam gets pronounced here. Ilal. Ilal. Jami'a. Okay. أذهب إلى الجامعة مع أمي صباحا. So you take the ha sound and pronounce it with an because you have فتحتين. أذهب إلى الجامعة مع أمي صباحا. I go to the university with my mom صباحا, mornings, meaning in the morning, okay, or repetitively in the mornings. وأحب أن أذهب, and I like, and just means to. So that's a new word that you should have circled that because you don't know that. And I like to, or I love to, أذهب, go. I like to go. وأحب أن أذهب إلى المكتبة. So here you have maktaba. Meme here doesn't use our tongue, so it's qamari. So that means we're going to connect to the lam. إلى المكتبة. وأحب أن أذهب إلى المكتبة قبل. So here you have an example where you have the fatha here, right? In this case, you had the alif sound is connecting. So the lam with the alif, ila, that ila, la, 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 that part is connecting to this lam, ilal. Right? In this one, you have a lam with a fatha. And then you have sad. Sad is a sun letter. Therefore, there's a shadda on it. So we're going to connect it to that shadda. So instead of saying qablal, we're not going to pronounce the lam here because sad is a sun letter. Qabla saf. So we're taking the sound of qabla and connecting it to that sad. Qabla saf. وأحب أن أذهب إلى المكتبة قبل الصف. And I like to go to the library before class. المكتبة كبيرة. How would you pronounce this if you saw ضمتين on here? المكتبة كبيرة. You would pronounce the T sound. Good. أنا أخذت. أنا أخذت. I took. Remember, this to is past tense for I. I took. هذا, and then the word al-kitab. So here you have alif lam, you have a word before it. So هذا ends with dal alif, da. That's the sound that's going to connect. Al-kitab, kaf here doesn't use our tongue, therefore it's qamari, so we're going to pronounce the lam. هذا الكتاب. So anytime you see هذا with al, we're going to connect the two. Now, whether it connects to the lam or whether it connects to the letter after it depends on whether the letter after the alif lam is a sun or moon letter. أنا أخذت هذا الكتاب من. Now this noon is going to be connected here. Meme is a moon letter, so we're going to connect to the lam. من المكتبة. And we saw the same example. Where was it here? Min al-Maghrib, it's basically the same thing because the meme is the moon letter. Min al-Maktaba. أنا أخذت هذا الكتاب من المكتبة. So I got this book, or I took this book from the library. أستاذتي. Ustada is teacher, ya is mine. So my teacher, and notice there's a ta here, so she's female. أستاذتي تحب, because she's female, that's why you have this dot here. أستاذتي تحب, I'm going to pronounce it dhamma here, تحب هذا الكتاب. So it's the same example that we saw here. Okay, connecting here. هذا الكتاب. أستاذتي تحب هذا الكتاب. صاحبتي فاطمة. My friend. So صاحبة is friend, it's female because it ends in a ta. My friend, the ya here. My friend Fatima, صاحبتي فاطمة, أخذت, she took. So when you have the ta with the sukun, it means she took. Whereas here with the dhamma, it was I took. So my friend Fatima took هذا and then الصف. Sad here is a sun letter because our tongue gets used when we pronounce it. So there's a shadda on it. So we're going to connect the sound from hada to the shadda on the sad. So it's going to become hada and then connect it to that sad. Hada saf. Okay, so it's going to connect. صاحبتي فاطمة أخذت هذا الصف معي. مع means with. Ya is me, so with me. So I'll read the whole paragraph one more time. أذهب إلى الجامعة مع أمي صباحا وأحب أن أذهب إلى المكتبة قبل الصف. المكتبة كبيرة. أنا أخذت هذا الكتاب من المكتبة. أستاذتي تحب هذا الكتاب. صاحبتي فاطمة أخذت هذا الصف معي. Let's go through the last one. You're going to pause it, do the same thing. Give it a skim, see if there's any words that you don't know, and then you're going to do the alif lam connections. So here we've got 2 connections right there. We have one right here. And then we're going to go through and look at tanween. We've got one here. Got one there. Here's one. Got a bunch of examples of tanween in this one. Okay, so let's go through this. هذا, remember whenever you see هذا, it's pronounced with that alif qasira on the ha. So it's هذا, not هذا. هذا رفيقي أحمد. هذا رفيقي أحمد. This is my friend أحمد. هذا رفيقي أحمد. هو في صفي. So he's in صفي class. اللغة العربية. So now we want to connect these. So here you have lam here has a shadda because it's shamsi. So you're going to connect this vowel to that shadda. So what do we get? We have safi, and it's going to connect to that lam. Saffil, and then this word lugha, meaning language. Lugha, and you have a ta marbuta with a kasra. Lughati. Saffil lughati. And now we have another alif lam. And in this one you have ayn, and ayn is qamari. It doesn't use your tongue. Therefore you pronounce the al. We say al-arabiya. So because you pronounce the lam, we're going to connect that vowel to the lam. So the lughati will connect to this lam. Lughatil. Saffil lughatil arabiya. صف اللغة العربية. Class, language, Arabic, meaning Arabic language class. Okay. هذا رفيقي أحمد. هو في صف اللغة العربية. So say that a few times. هو في صف اللغة العربية. مع أخي محمود. محمود. With my friend Mahmoud. Okay, let's do the next line. Ustadhatuhu. This who, you know the word ustada is teacher. This who is his. So ustadhatuhu, his teacher. Ustadhatuhu ismuha. His teacher is feminine because there's a ta here. So her name. Ustadhatuhu ismuha. So ismuha, her name is تزيين. تزيين. أنا اسمي تزيين. فأنا أستاذته. صح؟ أستاذته اسمها تزيين. So her name is تزيين. وهي, and she, لطيفة. Now you have ta مربوطة. It has ضمتين. تن. لطيفة. أستاذته اسمها تزيين وهي لطيفة. So his teacher, his professor, her name is Tazeen, and she is Latifa, is nice or pleasant. Shukran. طيب أحمد طالب. So now you have the letter ba. It has the un sound on it. So we take the ba and pronounce it bun. أحمد طالب. Ahmad's a student. Wa, and this word right here is al-an. Starts with alif lam, al. And you're pronouncing that lam, right? Because there's a hamza after it. That alif madda is the sound of a hamza with an alif. Al-an. So anytime you have wa and al, you're going to connect them. So we're going to say wal-an. So instead of saying wa al-an, it's just going to be wal-an. أحمد طالب والآن أنا خباز. خباز. I'm a baker. أنا خباز. Here's a new word. You should have circled it. أعمل. أعمل. And we also have a new word right here. 2 new words in here. I'm a baker. أعمل في مخبز. مخبز. You have the in sound on the zay, so it's zin. مخبز في Dearborn مع أبي. أعمل is a verb. You can tell because it starts with alif hamza and it has 3 letters afterwards. أعمل. So if you're a baker, what verb could go after it? I'm a baker. I blank in Dearborn. مع أبي, with my dad. I work. أنا خباز. أعمل في مخبز. Where does a baker work? Notice, مخبز has the same letters. خبز. Same letters. These are because they come from the same root. A baker works in a bakery. Notice how baker and bakery in English have the same letters. It's the same thing in Arabic. خباز and مخبز have the same letters. أعمل في مخبز في Dearborn. So notice this أعمل, you're going to pronounce the a sound followed by the hamza. أعمل. أعمل. Okay. والآن أنا خباز أعمل في مخبز في Dearborn مع أبي, with my dad. أريد, if it had a dhamma, we'd say أريد. We've done this verb, I want. It starts with alif hamza because it's I. أريد عام. Now you have lam with fathatain on the alif. Remember, it's written with the alif because it doesn't end in ta marbuta or a hamza. So you pronounce the lam sound with the an sound. عملا. أريد عملا جديد. The dal has an an sound. Dan. جديدا. أريد عملا جديدا. So I want new work or a job. A new job or new work. Okay. So notice the word for job or work comes from the same letters that you see here. So let's see this paragraph one more time. I'll read it out loud. هذا رفيقي أحمد. هو في صف اللغة العربية مع أخي محمود. أستاذته اسمها تزيين وهي لطيفة. أحمد طالب والآن أنا خباز أعمل في مخبز في ديربورن مع أبي. أريد عملا جديدا. Okay. So those are the things that I'm looking for when you're reading the paragraph for the oral exam. I would recommend going through and practice reading as many of the handouts that I've given you that have paragraphs and sentences, and do those for practice. Because the paragraph that you will get will not be exactly the same, but very similar format, and all of the paragraphs will be similar in stories, right? You're talking about someone, maybe what they study, maybe where they go to school, something about their family members, right? Those, the types of words that you've seen in vocab, those are the type of paragraph, the descriptive type of paragraphs that you're going to get. Okay, so practice reading, practice your vocab. If you have any questions, let me know.